And what was interesting, Koto, is that with this Lila Wallace grant that we got, so we received the grant, then I go to work for AMS, and then now I'm actually visiting some of the theaters that got this grant the way that AMS was doing for our theater. So I had a perspective of having our theater having received the grant, and now I'm helping do part of the evaluation of the grant. So that was pretty cool. That's, being on both sides of the fence. And here at AMS, many of us have also been artists. So I think it helps me as a consultant working with different theaters and performing arts centers to really understand what an actor is going through, or I've worked with stage managers and directors. And so you kind of have an understanding, not just from a sort of a, academic or that sort of perspective, where I think helps us speak the language and work really well with our clients. Yeah.
To another exciting episode of Nakoto Building Arts. I'm your host, Nakoto, and today I'd like to welcome another wonderful guest, and certainly someone I've been looking forward to speaking with, Lynette Turner. Lynette is a senior associate with AMS Planning and Research, an international arts management consulting firm based in Southport, Connecticut. They work exclusively in the arts and cultural sector, providing strategic and business plans, feasibility studies, cultural planning, market research, and program evaluation. Lynette has over 30 years of experience in the arts, with almost 26 of those years with AMS. Some of her past or current projects include providing strategic or business planning for Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, Old Globe San Diego, Theater for New Audience New York, and the Apollo Foundation New York. She also chairs AMS's Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Committee, and manages their Pathways to Consulting Fellowship program, the only one of its kind in the field, designed to support populations that have been underrepresented in the arts management consulting field. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the podcast, Lynette Turner. How are you today, Lynette?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here and that you want to have this conversation. So I love arts and cultural sector, and I like talking about it. So I'm very pleased to be here. Yeah, thanks again.
Awesome. I think the first time I met you, I'd seen your name floating around in different emails and things like that, but I met you on a project when you're going after a cultural center in Gainesville, Florida. So that was the first time we had opportunity to speak and chat. And so it was awesome.
And I'd heard your name forever too. So it's always great to put a face to the name.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. So, well, just take me back to the beginning. I sort of like to, in this program is to find out more about the people in the arts and cultural sector. So just take me back to the beginning, like your background and how you all started, prior to joining AMS. Take us back where you originally from?
Yeah. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, but I only lived there for 2 years, and then we moved to Japan. So you might guess, was your father in the military?
Yes.
He was in the military. And so when I was 4 years old, we moved to Alaska. So, and back then for sure that you didn't just show up there. There was no pipeline. There weren't very many roads. There's still not very many people. It's twice the size of Texas, and there's only 1 million people in the entire state. But it's a beautiful, gorgeous state. It was a wonderful place to grow up. The only downside is I do not like cold weather, which has quite some irony to it, being from Alaska and then going to school and then, living on the East Coast. I am working remotely now in Arizona, which is okay with me because it's nice and warm here. So that's where I grew up.
It might be too hot.
People think that, but maybe because I was cold so much of my life. It's 110. I'm not out walking in it. So, I'm good. It's just always pleasant weather. But I always liked the arts when I was young. I'm going to say 6 or 7. My parents put me in dance school. I think just so I would just, channel that energy because I was always jumping around the house, dancing and singing around the house. So I started dancing very young, did theater and started in like 8th grade. And then I just really was hooked. So always had that part of my life.
I was going to say, which type of dancing? You say dancing. What type of
I started in ballet, which is kind of
Okay.
the backbone of, I think, every kind of dance. And did that for a few years. And I was like, this is boring. So then I started taking like modern and then ultimately I really have a passion for West African dance and studied it quite a bit. And then as a young adult, actually got a grant to go to West Africa. I was there for 5 weeks, really studying the music, the dance. And then I went back to Alaska and I guess I'll jump to that in a minute. I was working at Perseverance Theater, but I was also doing these artists in the schools, workshops, and traveling all around the state. And I had my, trunk full of African instruments that I, brought back from Africa and teach the kids sort of African orchestras and storytelling and music and dance and everything. So when I went to college, I actually went to school and studied music and dance, theater and dance, I should say, and graduated with a degree in theater from the University of Utah, which is a bit of a culture shock because I'm from Alaska and I didn't know much about the culture. And I was raised a liberal Presbyterian, but they had a really good school. And you have to, some schools you have to audition to get in. You can't just show up and go, oh, I want to be. So I auditioned because a dance company from Utah was touring around the country and they came to Anchorage and they were doing master classes. And I was doing all the choreography at my high school. So the main dancers from the high schools all got picked to do these master classes, which was so exciting. And then they were auditioning while they were touring to see if folks could get it. And honestly, a friend dared me to audition. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get in. And then I did. So sort of at the beginning of my senior year, I knew where I was going to go. And I went there. And dancing is wonderful, but it's not quite as talkative as theater. And I always wondered which one I wanted to study. So I ended up shifting over to theater because you have to talk in theater. Took dance all the way through, got my degree in theater. And then came back to Anchorage and worked in some theater companies there for a while, and then ultimately moved to Juneau, Alaska, where Perseverance Theater is located. And at the time, it was like the theater's cross-cultural theater company and did some amazing and incredible work. So I ended up working for 13 years at Perseverance Theater, first as an actor, director, choreographer, writer, and then as producing director. Quite the difference from being on the stage to finding the money to be on the stage.
Right. But you had both sides of it too.
Had both sides of it. And I ended up all the way from Alaska to Connecticut with AMS because AMS way back then had been awarded to do the evaluation for the Lila Wallace Foundation, who had this large grant to expand and diversify their audiences way back then. We're still doing that now, right? We're still trying to do that now.
Right.
But we got a grant. It was the largest grant we've ever gotten. It was $600,000. And we were just, thrilled with it. And AMS was evaluating us. They had to travel all over the country. It's like 25 different spots or something, and interview every year that you had the grant. How are you doing? How are your strategies going? What's working? What's not working? And I became friendly with the director who was coming every year. And the last year he was there, he said, I don't know if you'd ever leave this paradise of Alaska, but it would be, we talked about how you would be a great addition to the team. And I said, well, I've been here 13 years and I have been thinking about what I want to do next, but I know it has to be in the arts and it has to be helping the arts. And he's like, ding, 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 ding. That's what we do. So ultimately I flew back to both our California office and Connecticut office to meet the leadership. And then a few months later, ended up in Connecticut, 4,000 miles away from home. Juneau's an island. First thing is an island. There's no road. You have to fly or go by boat. Everybody. You don't lock your doors, And then suddenly I'm like on the East Coast.
East Coast. Before, one question I was thinking about when you mentioned Alaska, because I did see that on your bio there. And so you were doing West African dances. And when I think of Alaska, I don't necessarily think of an audience that is subject to that. But
you're right. And I'm on an island. But ironically enough, that we had a group called African Rain. Didn't have a lot of African Americans in it, but it had people who were very skilled in the culture. And one of the reasons I've been to Africa a number of times, and one of the reasons that I was able to go there was because I applied when they still had individual artist grants, which frankly are hard to find anymore. The way money's just sort of disappearing, but Alaska had independent artist grants. And I applied for one, and I said, look, I'm living in Juneau, Alaska. I feel a passion for West African culture. I've done everything I can on this island. I've gone to Seattle for classes. I've gone to Anchorage for classes. I really need to go, to Africa. and study it and bring it back and share it with everybody, no matter, what your culture is.
Right.
And so that was an incredible experience to go there. I spent most of my time in the Gambia and to just like eat, sleep, just, the first thing you learn about is culture is a whole different time is a whole different animal there. They don't care. We are on time. I remember making friends with some people and I was supposed to meet them at this certain corner. And I'm there 10 minutes early, and then 10 o'clock comes, nobody, 11 o'clock comes. I'm starting to get worried. Maybe by 11:30, they just come sauntering up and they're not apologetic or anything. I'm like, how are you? Oh, fine. I stopped at so-and-so. And they're, when, you ask someone how they're doing, they say, my goat is sick. They really tell you how things are. Kind of whole different culture there. So that was a great experience, and I've been a couple times. As a matter of fact, I got to go back to Africa for work at one point. But yes, there's not a lot of people of color on the island or in Alaska overall. But it clearly didn't let it stop me from really learning what I could, and to have information I could share with other people.
Right. So at Perseverance Theater, you're putting on programs, and then I guess some of those same West African dances and performances, or all types of cultural arts.
Perseverance is theater, so mostly it's producing shows, some original, some not. Often there's I did a lot of choreography there, for the different shows that we did, which were all over the place. We did a show specific to the Native culture, Alaska Native culture, because we have so many amazing tribes there, and did a lot of work with that culture, which was very exciting. So a little bit of everything. That's certainly not specifically African American. That's sort of my side gig. Like even now I have a side gig. I'm an arts management consultant, but I got a lot of other stuff going on that I'm passionate about. So so that was a wonderful 13 years there. And then and what was interesting, Koto, is that with this Lila Wallace grant that we got, so we received the grant, then I go to work for AMS, and then now I'm actually visiting some of the theaters that got this grant the way that AMS was doing for our theater. So I had a perspective of having our theater having received the grant, and now I'm helping do part of the evaluation of the grant. So that was pretty cool. That's, being on both sides of the fence. And here at AMS, many of us have also been artists. So I think it helps me as a consultant working with different theaters and performing arts centers to really understand what an actor is going through, or I've worked with stage managers and directors, and so you kind of have an understanding, not just from a sort of a academic or that sort of perspective, where I think helps us speak the language and work really well with our clients.
I find that a lot with some of the people that I've interviewed, even on the design side of things. They were in some type of arts program, or they had that side of it, and then put it into the consultant role, which helped them be much better consultants. So I think that's awesome.
For sure.
So now you've been with AMS and you're working with AMS. Help me understand, because I've worked with your company on several projects, but as always with more on the operation side of it, I guess, or project development side of it, rather. Stephen Wolf and Michelle Walters and John Ferris. And so how does your role and what you do fit into the whole scheme of AMS Planning Research?
So it's definitely like the building part of it, which is very important. But I often have the role of the project manager. So we do a lot of strategic planning, for example. So, often arts organizations are good about the artistic part, but, could use some guidance on the business part or the strategic part. So we do a lot of strategic planning. I might do tasks on the projects like research, best practices, but I also do a lot of the engagement pieces, the people part of it, the key informant interviews, leading focus groups or co-facilitating community meetings. We are a firm that is very connected with making sure we hear from the community when we're making decisions. So we're not a firm like you hire us for a strategic plan and then we go away for 6 months and we come back and say, here's your plan. We really need to hear from the people. And so as a project manager, I'm also just making sure that the trains are running on time. So I'm the point person with the client, making sure everybody's clear in terms of what tasks they're supposed to be doing. And I think in addition to being a communicator, you have to be really, really organized. So I guess that's where my Virgo traits come in, because Virgos are very organized. You have to kind of be able to think strategically, long range planning. and watch out for scope creep, which you may know this from your work.
Right.
So let's say you have a task where you're supposed to interview 20 people and the client's like, oh, but there's really these 40 people that we okay, well, let's figure out how we can do that or how we might combine, a couple of people at a time, but sort of doing that. And, I always say too, I think with a lot of positions, you can learn the task, but you really have to like people.
Yeah,
you really have to like people because you're dealing with all sorts of different people with all sorts of different personalities. And it's almost like when I was directing a play, maybe it was a 5-person play, you're trying to get everybody on the same page in terms of like the vision for the play. And you have to work with each of them differently to get to the same endpoint. So how do you talk to people? What's the best way they take in information? It's like figuring all that out. So that's an important part of what I do. And I also keep an eye on the equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility piece. Do we have diversity at the table? Are we making sure we're hearing from a variety of stakeholders in the community, which is really important. And then as importantly is, okay, we invite people to the table and we listen to what they say. Are we implementing it?
Okay, right.
So
right.
So that's kind of, what I saw. It's a lot of, I wear a lot of hats.
In the when you're doing the workshops for the community, so you bring in a lot of all the people to see what they want built or something like
well,
to that
it
effect?
really depends. So it might be we've gathered a lot of information from maybe the interviews and the focus groups, and then we want to share and we've done some research. Maybe we've done a scan of activities that are already happening. We know what venues are already out there. So we've got sort of a backbone of what's going on in the community. We may bring the community in and say, okay, this is what we've learned to date. What do you think? What are we missing? How would we try to find different ways for them to contribute to the process, in more than one way. So we're doing a project right now that has a lot of tentacles in the community. So communities are doing community surveys, but we are interviewing, doing focus groups, having community meetings, having a website that's interactive so they can, be engaged. So it really depends. And we're really keen in these workshops. So maybe just the client, we always like to have an advisory group that's really helping, guiding, make sure we're on the same track. And we have to do decision making, and so we've become quite skilled at figuring out ways to do that. That's not just us talking at people. Let's design some kind of activity so that we get to the end point, but it feels like you're having fun doing it. So we spend a good amount of time doing that because once we leave, they have to own it. And we don't want something that sits on the shelf. And I can say, I remember when I first came to this work, the strategic plan or business plan, it might be 60 pages long, hopefully somebody reads it. The core of that plan now is much, direct for the main pieces of what we're trying to get the message across as, and the rest is in appendices, so we learn over time too, and keep refining how we do our work and connect with the community.
Now, I mentioned when I was doing your intro, I saw some of the projects that you worked on. Do you have any favorites that you've worked on?
I do, and one came to mind right away, and this is the Santa Clara Pueblo. It's one of my favorites. It's a reservation in New Mexico, and we did a study to advise on a cultural center for the Pueblo. And speaking about, I mentioned time in Africa, same thing. There's a whole different, connection to time there. And it's just what's great with me, but when working with, other cultures and structures, what can we learn from them? The way we do it isn't the only way. And I thought they had their priorities in place. So for instance, I might have flown from the East Coast. I'm in the rental car. I'm going to the reservation. If somebody passes away, that's it. Everything stops. Too bad you came this far. We honor our tradition. We honor our people. So their priorities are right. And then I think I like this project too, because it was one that really required us to be really flexible. So for instance, we really wanted to hear from the elders in the community, which aren't really used to Westerns coming in and talking to them and asking questions. One person apparently asked, oh, do we have to pay AMS? Are they going to come and talk to us? Oh, no, you don't have to pay us. What can we do? Well, that community, the elders, gather together in circle around food. And a lot of cultures, food is a very important part. I came to their circle and sat and had a conversation. It wasn't like, come to this building, and look at this big PowerPoint. And, so just having that kind of flexibility is wonderful. And you just become very close to there's some clients like that client that I still keep in touch with. And there's just a sensitivity. They did something I'll never forget. I've been at AMS for 20 years and I must have mentioned it because, and this particular province is famous for their pottery. It's beautiful, gorgeous pottery, which frankly, I probably couldn't afford to like buy much of. And I mentioned this, and then not long after that, I get in the mail this beautiful piece of pottery they had made to send to me. I'm like, you kind of remember those clients,
right? Yeah.
So I like that one, and I like the larger ones are fine, but there's something about those smaller ones. We did a project in Saranac Lake in the Adirondack Mountains, so you're like in the mountains. A cultural plan, population 5,000. But, with the smaller projects, there's just such an opportunity to really get to know the people that you're working with. So it's different when there's 1 or 2 people, or you have like an advisory group of 40, which is, something that happens. So there's something about each of those sort of structures, but I do have a soft heart for those small ones.
Now, is that a project that would be built, or a project that
this was a feasibility? This is a feasibility about building a cultural center. It started out as a feasibility study for building a museum and a cultural center, but in our initial research, they're not that far from Santa Fe. There are a lot of museums already, so we ended up suggesting that in the cultural center that there be like a gallery that would have artwork, or in the gift shop, the structure, so that artists can, sell their work and get a commission and that sort of thing. So that's another thing. We're just like, we are flexible in the work that we do. We write a proposal just because we said we're going to do A, B, and C. If we get to a point where like B doesn't make any sense to really move the project forward and serve the client, let's sit and talk about what we need to shift and change to do that. So we're pretty, flexible in that way. And and the client certainly appreciates it, and it just kind of makes the most sense in terms of how to operate.
And with your feasibility portion of it, you just given them your recommendation. So is that outside consultant with not that it's like you don't have an ulterior motive. You're trying to give them the right information.
Right.
We are not, no, let's build a building. No, you're giving them information. No, you probably shouldn't.
Sometimes we do that. I mean, and that's why it's sometimes very good to have an outside party coming in. We can say, we recommend it, we don't recommend it. We can ask the hard questions that maybe the client can't, because, when I was younger, I used to think arts and politics don't mix. Well, forget that. I mean, politics is everywhere. Sometimes the politicians who come up with the money, or someone in the community may have this pre-designed, we certainly had clients who at the beginning were like, well, this is what we need you to say. And we said, we may not be the right firm for you. There are firms that will say what you want them to say, but we can't do that. And we don't know what we're going to say yet. We have to do the work first. Most times they're like, ultimately they appreciate that, because we want them to, and if we say we don't recommend something, we give them a reason why, and some strategy and structure and guidance about what they might do to get to that end point. Because it's not, it doesn't make sense to build this incredible, wonderful facility if there's not a population to go to it. Or you want this big fancy space, but you're in a demographic where people don't have the funds to pay to come there. And it's got to be largely subsidized, just because sometimes another misnomer that, we're going to build the center and just revenues are going to get pouring in. And, if you charge somebody a ticket price for what it really costs to put on a play, even wealthy people probably couldn't come. So it's really sort of, keeping all that in mind when we're working with them. So and it varies from project to project. Nothing's sort of cookie cutter. Depends on that's why someone will say to me, oh my gosh, are you bored? You're doing 3 business plans or strategic plans. No, even if some of the tasks are the same, some of the questions always alter. The communities themselves are always different. The people and the players and the key stakeholders shift from community to community. So it's never boring, even if you're doing more than one of a certain kind of project at a time.
What's your longest running project from like when you started it and now it's still going, or how long did it take?
That tends to happen longer on the facility side. Okay. So I know that AMS has worked on projects where we've been probably engaged and still helping people for like, a decade or even more. I'm sure of it. Yeah. It's just sometimes, and sometimes projects are phased. So maybe someone says, oh, we're really excited, and we want to do, these are the 3 phases we want to do. We have the money for the first 2 phases. Let's get through that. And that information can actually help them to raise money for the 3rd phase. Right. So that takes a little bit more time. So I mean, our projects can be from 3 to 4 months to, we're working on a project now that's by design 15 months long because of the community engagement piece. And my hat's off to that client for saying, we really need to take the time to hear from the community and understand what they want and what they need.
Right. Well, I have a Ask the Experts portion here. So I asked you, you're the expert. So from your experience in strategic and business planning, are there any like keys, like 1 or 2 keys to run a successful arts organization that you can share with us?
I can, and I'm going to start by saying clarity of mission and purpose.
Clarity of mission, purpose.
People sometimes forget about the purpose, right? The mission is what you do. This is what we do. The purpose is why you do it and for whom. And sometimes people just don't really think about that. That's really important. So we add that when we're talking about your goals and your objectives and strategies and tactics and what's your mission, what's your vision, and what is your purpose. And sometimes we have whole workshops just around that to help people really gain clarity, and I put that up someplace where you can see it. My mission, my vision, my purpose, my values. So clarity around that is good. And the other one I think is really important is capable leadership, and a leader that embodies the staff, because no one can do it by themselves. So a leader that gives staff some decision-making capabilities, and then actually appreciates that, utilizes that, has them in on conversation. It's great to have some kind of a roaming staff meeting where people are assigned to take some kind of a leadership role, even if the hierarchy, they're not at the top of the ladder. They're doing a whole lot of work. So I think leadership is key. I mean, I see some of the most successful organizations being successful. Yeah, they have great programming, but it's that leader that's really able to inspire people and give them, working in the arts. No one's making $1 zillion. Right, we're doing it because we believe in it, we love it, we think it's a critical, important part of the fiber of our life and our world, and which can be challenging over time because there are some pressing issues in our communities. People without shelter, people without food, having clean water, and so more and more over time, philanthropists or those giving funds are like, well, we're really shifting to address these needs, and still some are keeping the arts in the forefront, but it's really important. And, if we didn't have artists, we wouldn't have any books to read. I mean, if you could think about the things we wouldn't have in our life without arts and culture, they might go, oh, maybe this might be something worth considering. But I think mission and really being clear about purpose and leadership, I think, are some really important components that people. I think that people should consider, and we think of that when we get to see all these different leaders. I was going to say, we get to see them. We get to see how they work. We in our staff meetings, we have we alternate different topics, and we do learnings. And the next one I'm doing is actually a whole deck on leaders and different kinds of leaders, and recognizing what kind of leaders we are as a firm and individually, because we're all leading in some way, and then keeping in mind, okay, what kind of leader we working with these different organizations, and understanding how they work and what kind of leader they are can help us work with them and give them good information.
I guess your ability to see, because you've worked on so many projects and seen so many different leaders and organizations, how they run, I guess that gives you a better ability to influence or give some consulting advice to another leader to help them in their organization. So that's
right. Great. Both leadership, in the organization, and then we work a lot with boards of directors as well. And because they have a hard job, and making sure they have clarity of mission and purpose. I've certainly been in a room where we'd say, okay, what kind of board do you think you are? Oh, we're fundraising. Oh, we're advisory. Oh, we're working. Oh, we're governance. This is in the same room, people saying. So first we got to get on the same page. You can't, prioritizing is a big part of what we do. You have to prioritize. You can't be all those things with equal weight. You might, are you primarily a fundraising board? And sometimes you are. Sometimes if you're young and just starting, you're primarily a working board because there's hardly any staff. So as challenging and complex as boards are, for whatever reason, I love working with boards.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
being a part of that conversation to help them do the best they can do for the organization.
Awesome. So you've been in the industry, the arts cultural industry, for 30 something years now. 25 of those years being with AMS. That's a long time.
Yeah, I was like
in
5 years old when I started.
Exactly. I can believe it.
Yeah.
So 25 years with one company. Many people, I have been with the company I work for is Venue for 10 plus years now. So it's not often that someone is with a company for so long. So for the bulk of your career, you've been with one company. So obviously something is going right there. How has it been?
I mean, you're right. I would not be here this long if it wasn't something right. It's really been a wonderful experience. And I think I appreciate a couple of things. I appreciate the passion we have for the work that we do. I appreciate how important we think research and having data to tell the story is. I appreciate our connection to community, and I like the staff we work with. I mean, I don't know how many, just listening to other people talk, about where they work. There's usually maybe somebody where you're like, oh, yeah, do I have to deal with this person today? The staff at AMS literally really like and respect each other. We're very busy, but at any point you can reach out to anyone and they will stop what they're doing or do whatever they have to do to help you. Leadership is keen on, is there some training that you would like to take in terms of professional development or in EDIA, because we're very connected to working for internally and externally on that. So it's just that sort of camaraderie and commitment, and that we do good work and I believe we do good work because previous clients come back to us, or someone will come to us and say, someone else did this work, but it wasn't exactly what we expected, and we thought it would be this, this, and this, and we know that this is what you do. So that's helpful. And then we also get work the regular way that we just hear about an RFP or a firm like you, so someone connects us, because we're, and we also know, I think we know our lane. I think that's another reason we're there. When we first were coming, I was first being asked to come to AMS, I said, is this a fundraising consulting firm? Because at Perseverance, I also was doing the fundraising, and located where the capital is, I was fundraising for the entire state. And I was really good at fundraising, but it's really hard. And he said, we're not fundraising consultant. Okay. But our team might have, a fundraising consultant. It might have cost consultants, acousticians, architects, theater experts. We work with these amazing teams of people all over the country, all over the world. And collectively put together teams that are really good. So I think the atmosphere, the working culture, the work that we do, there's been a few people over time, it's like, oh, this travel. I love traveling. That seems to be, people say that about people like in Alaska, because we have to travel to get anywhere, right? You can't get in. When I moved to the East Coast, the first thing was like, I could get in a car and like just drive to Boston or drive to Rhode Island. You can't do that from Alaska. And I love traveling, even when it's got crazy or whatever thing. I meet incredible people. We'll talk about the work and the job that we do. So the traveling's always been a perk to me, to be able to get paid to travel and meet people all over the place. So yeah, I think it's the fact that we do good work and we have good people that's kept me there that long.
Now you have a unique perspective too. I travel and go to some of these conferences, and many times I don't see a lot of Black or African American people in the cultural arts space. From my perspective, you being an African American woman, how describe your experience in this?
Yeah, no, we're in the same boat. I will tell you, it's been a somewhat solitary journey. I don't see a lot of people that look like me when I walk into a room. I didn't when I started, and frankly, I see a few more, but not as many as you think you would see. In terms of like BIPOC and with arts management consulting firms, there are a few firms. They're like a lot of more solitary practitioners, like one or two people or a small term. But I don't see a great deal of people of color, working with a full team like us. Where you have decent salary, you get a 401k. So yeah, and particularly because I'm 66 years old. People don't think I look that old.
No.
So when I started at AMS 25 years ago, I probably looked even younger. And there were times when I certainly would walk into a room,
Yeah.
and I'm the only one, and it's often white men in suits.
Right.
And hey, it's what it is. And I can see him kind of looking at, I wonder what she's doing here. But
Right.
once I open my mouth and clearly I know what I'm talking about, and I'm offering the presentation or co-offering it or whatever, then it's fine. But I do appreciate too. I remember this has happened over time, but last year we were doing a project and I went and I co-facilitated a focus group, a big focus group. And afterwards, this African-American woman came up to me and said, I support the arts. I really like the arts in my community. I do what I can, but I can't tell you how much it means to walk into a room and see somebody that looks like me, talking to me, asking questions, making sure that I'm engaged. And I just want you to know that I appreciate that. So I like that. There've been an occasion where a client staff member only wanted to talk to a person of color. So, and I have no issue, sort of playing that role, helping to get people as engaged as I can. And then of course, in the last few years with the George Floyd and the, We See You at America, all this, it's really heightened people of color and inclusion and engagement. And I'm like, great, we need to keep having these conversations, and we're happy to sort of lead the charge where we can. For those
First of all, no, you do not look that age. You look much younger. So
well, let me tell you that when I was younger, I did not like it at all that I look so young. My mother always says, yeah, but when you get older, you appreciate it. I'm like, you're right about that. I'll feel old when someone starts guessing my age, but I think a lot of it, frankly, because work can be busy and can be stressful, is just your overall attitude about life. And I'm just a positive person. And I was just born that way. And they say some people, you can learn how to be positive, but some people are born that way. But I'm the one, that glass is, it's half full, not half empty. You didn't like that movie, but the costume design was really good. I mean, I just always find
right
in the situation.
Awesome. That's good. So how has it changed? You mentioned you've been in it for 20, 30 years. Has it changed? Is it getting better now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say, we're just talking, I'm going to say in terms of EDA, which has always been important to AMS long before it was like the issue everyone was talking about. There's more conversations now and more actual action that's taking place to address the issues. It's still not enough, but it's better. We still need more BIPOC people in positions of power in the industry, and we need people empowered to empower these other employees. But I think that's a big change. And I think it changed too in the sector, in the field, and I'll say post-pandemic, because that threw everybody for a loop. Everything was, closed down, nobody could come. It's just, I feel like a more of a willingness to be open-minded and flexible. Maybe we always used to do it this way. Well, that's not working anymore. What business model is going to work now? This is an opportunity, actually, with everything shut down. And we kept, fairly busy during the pandemic because people are like, okay, we have a break because you're so busy when you're running a theater. I know from helping to run one. Okay, now let's be strategic. How do we want to come back? What do we want to do? What different ways can we try to connect with your audiences? I was just in a theater roundtable a couple of days ago, and one of the folks was talking about how it used to be that you have your audience and they have to come and like everything. But there's a shifting about, what? It's okay. There's going to be a population that's only going to like this kind of content. And that's perfectly okay. We're not a failure because we can't get everybody to come to everything.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
And that's like a really, for people, a really big aha moment. There's a lot of people, there's no shortage of people. The ongoing challenge is getting people to come. We know that subscriptions for a long time have been going down. So it's the, single ticket buyers. We know that now more and more people, young people, they're doing everything on their phones. Okay, when you want to sell a show or have them do a survey, we got to make sure and have this in a tool in a manner that can be accessible. So I think part of me is just like more open to the way people are thinking. There's always talk about risk that needs to be calculated. Okay. What is success? Is success butts in seats, or is success that we get a population into our theater that normally doesn't come to our theater? It might be full, but now we've invited them in. And AMS has talked a long time about welcome, invite, retain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Invite, welcome, retain. So you invite people, you welcome them,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's the retain part. How are you going to get them back? And you're not going to get them back by doing only one August Wilson show a year to the Black population. Say, well, I don't understand why they're not coming back. We did August Wilson one time last year, haven't done anything yet.
Right. Since, yeah.
Speaks it because people, me too, I like to sit in a show sometimes and see myself reflected on the stage. Right. And behind the stage. Yeah. You know, who's the stage manager? Who's the lighting designer?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
So I think that openness, I think, for instance, post-COVID, the hybrid working situation, people working from home remotely. You know, now people go into an interview and part of the conversation that the potential, you know, hiree has is, oh, well, let's talk about the hybrid. How often can I work at home? How often do you come to the office? I think that if someone sat down in an interview before COVID and said, how many days can I work from home? I don't even know if that interview would have continued. Right. So there's just this sort of required flexibility, and we all had to learn how to work over Zoom, and we did it. You know,
yes, definitely a lot of change on different facets there in this. So I know you've had your hands full over this last couple of years. So yeah.
Yes.
Just the last couple of questions here. I was looking at your LinkedIn. You sort of touched on it earlier. Like you traveled to West Africa, North Africa, Central Africa, Spain, Portugal. Like you're a world traveler, you know. How has that influenced your worldview? And I say that because I don't get to travel like that, but I've watched Anthony Bourdain. I used to watch him all the time.
Oh yeah, me too.
Just to see the different cultures, and it was so wonderful to see that. How has it affected or changed your world?
Well, I mean, most of that travel isn't work related, although, you know, at least one of them has been. I think it's important in order for us to go even into communities in the United States, whether it's a Latinx community, whether it's pick any community, to understand how these people live, because I think Westerners can, and I can say I can be guilty of this, go in with the expectations of the way we do things. This is the way we meet. This is the way we think. This is the way we pray. It's not the only way. We live in this sort of bubble sometimes. So I think it's important to get out of our own bubble, go to other countries and cultures and understand what they do. One of the trips to Africa we were working for the State Department, the Jazz Ambassadors Program, where they took like the best jazz musicians in the United States and sent them all around the world as sort of ambassadors to the United States. You know, music crosses all borders and cultures. You know, it's not political. Definitely. And so we were engaged to evaluate this program, and part of it was traveling to these different parts of the world. And I saw the list of places to go, and I saw Africa on them. Like, sign me up. I've been a couple of times before I left to go. And so we went with this wonderful jazz group from New York to Cameroon, which is in Central Africa. And part of what they did was find people in the community to host workshops and things like that. And so there's this organization all the way over there called the Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation that really does a lot of amazing work with sort of the vision is to have more equality in Cameroon and have sustainable development and really try to get rid of poverty and do it in a nonviolent way. So we went there and they were hosting us, and we're at their office, and certainly we did the workshops and I got the data and everything that we needed, but he took me to this room and it had like a shelf with one book on it. I was like, is this your library? He said, yes, we desperately need books, and we're next to a university that doesn't have any books either. And I said, this is not related to work, but I'll go back to the United States and I'll see what I can do to maybe get you some books. And I came back and it just spiraled. So it turned into a project I called Words Across the World. And ultimately I sent them 2,500 books. I had people leaving books on my doorstep. You know, it was a work trip, but honestly, it turned into like a spiritual adventure. And I've been on their international board of directors since then. And they do amazing work in the midst of just all sorts of tragedies that are going over there. They don't have electricity and they roll it out. They had rebels come and we were having a board meeting. Oh yes, part of our staff and our vehicles were kidnapped and I had to negotiate their release. It puts in perspective what my problems are.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
So the world travel just really helps me understand other people's perspectives and just remember that the way I do it, my belief systems aren't right or wrong, just is, and to respect and appreciate everyone else's life
Yeah.
experiences.
That's definitely on my wife and I's. We've been talking about getting to Costa Rica is one of the places. Rwanda.
Mm.
How do you say it? Rwanda,
Yeah.
and some parts of Africa, so South Africa. So we're looking to do that very soon. So yeah,
Great.
that's awesome. And now you also do a lot of volunteer work as well, right?
Yes, I
Mhm.
volunteer with this foundation, and I haven't been as involved yet in Arizona because I'm still fairly new. But I was very involved in Connecticut with food bank
Mhm.
projects,
Yeah.
and it just so
Yeah.
many in Arizona because it's a warm culture. Apparently, those without shelter, move
Mhm.
here on purpose because the weather's good year
Right.
round, and so everywhere you go, I always get in conversations with people because I always have a thing full of dollar bills or these little packets that have like a couple dollars and a granola bar and a small toiletry because we travel a lot to
Mhm.
hotels, so we have all these little
Yeah.
toiletries.
Yeah.
And and I'm also an ordained interfaith and spiritual minister, and so I just have this desire to be helpful, and so I
Yeah. Yeah.
hand these out. But all people are like, you shouldn't give them money because they might go drink a beer with it. I'm like, I'm not going to judge that. I don't know,
Right.
but they might go buy formula for their baby.
Right.
you know,
Yeah. You never
this
know.
is
You
what
never know. Yeah.
from my heart, my mind, this is what I want to do. And I'm
Mhm.
perfectly happy to do that. So I actually think everybody should be required to volunteer somewhere doing something, but that's just my
That's
perspective.
yeah. Awesome. And you say now what is this? Because I see I am a positivologist. I've never heard that term before.
That's because it's not
Does
in
it
the
mean
dictionary. I
okay?
literally
Okay.
some years ago was just contemplating because I'm also a meditator. I'm like, what do I call this?
Mhm.
I'm always talking to coworkers, strangers in the airport, family about being positive and having a positive attitude. And
So you
literally
coined that.
this little voice said positivologist. And I said, I've never heard of that. Googled it, did the whole search, wasn't trademarked. So I trademarked it.
Oh
And so I
wow.
wrote a book about positivity, and I do other
Yeah.
positivity modalities like workshops on positivity. It all sort of falls under that positivologist title, which
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's pretty cool. No one else is using it.
Yeah. I wanted to name that book too. You had a book, the 10 B's of Positivity, 10 steps to a more positive way of
Yeah,
living.
yeah.
So you're an
And it's like
author as well. Yes.
I am an author, and it started just me just journaling to remind myself. And the friend said, "Why don't you just make it into a book?" And so it's just things
Right.
I think about in my life. Be honest, be open
Mhm.
minded, and be a good listener. Be grateful. So it's
Okay.
just a chapter on all that, and then people can actually. There's also I think colors have power, so there's colors connected to each chapter, and a place where
Mhm.
people can make notes. And so yeah, I just like doing things like
Yeah.
that to remind
Mhm.
people that with all of our challenges, it could always be worse. No matter how good or bad it is, it could always be worse.
Right.
And
Right.
what can we
Yeah.
do to help other people,
Yeah.
professionally and personally?
Well, I'll have to go to Amazon and get me a copy of that. That's a
Thank you.
great thing, and I'll put it down in the link too when I post this to let people know how they can get it. It's on Amazon and I guess
It
everywhere.
is. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so
Yeah,
much. Yeah.
awesome. So the last question is, what's next for you? What's
Well, I've talked about how I've been with AMS for 25 years. January will be 26 years. And then actually the R word, I'm retiring after 26 years.
oh
I know. It's going to be just think about it. It's going to be pretty strange to get up one day and after, 26 years, not sit down at your computer to do what you're doing. But
right,
I feel
right.
like it's been a good run, and it really has to do with family. My parents are both 90. They're both still
Mm,
here. They're doing
bless you.
relatively well. And I'm like, at this stage of their life, I just want to spend as much time with them as I can. So spend time with them, families, friends, traveling, of course.
Yeah, of
Doing some
course.
traveling. My second book is published. I had this vision of 10 books in the series of the 10 Bs. So the second
Okay.
book is written. It's not, and so I want to get that published. And then I love being a interfaith and a spiritual ordained minister. So I like
Mm,
doing like officiating at weddings or baby blessings or even memorials.
mm.
Whatever way I can sort of be helpful for people. And I'm a night owl, which has been a challenge all my life because I want to stay up all night, but I have to get up in the morning. So I can probably sleep in a little
Sleep
later.
in
Yeah,
like I wanted to do this
I'll still
morning.
stay up all night, but I'll be able to sleep in a little later. So that's sort of what's next on the
Yeah.
agenda. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, congratulations. Wow, just to
Thank you.
to conclude the career and now be able to do everything you want to do on your own time, on your own schedule. So I
Yeah,
look forward to
thank
that
you.
myself one day. So yeah, what
Thank
inspiration.
you. And
Inspiration.
thank you so much for having me. This was delightful. I appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity. I love talking about, something I'm so passionate about. So It was
Thank
really,
you, and I
really a lot of fun.
appreciate you. Just the final question is, how can my viewers get in contact with you if they need to?
Well, my AMS email is
Mhm.
lturner, TURNER, at AMS, like Apple Mary Sally, -online.com. And I have a personal email address if for some reason people want to reach out to me there. And it's kind of long, so it's like it's one word,
Okay.
Lynette Positive Bliss. Of course, you
Okay.
get that with me being positive. So
Right.
Lynette
Right.
Positive Bliss at gmail.com is that
Awesome.
email
Awesome.
address.
I'll
Yeah.
put that down in the notes there. Do you have another website too that you'll have as well for
I have a
your
personal website. It's
that
not
you're gonna
related
have?
to
Okay.
work.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Well, thanks, Lynette, for your time. I really enjoyed this, and
thank
be
you. Me
talking with you.
too.
Talking with you soon. Too.
Sounds good. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.